Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the proposed statement of licensing policy. We will first start with 72 seconds of silence to remember those who lost their life in the event of tragedy.
Thank you.
I would like to thank the committee for all their hard work and the officers. Been really excellent working with all of you and input. We will have the meeting led by Fiona because she worked very hard on this statement, and we will then direct questions to them. Yes, we have to do the apologies. Sorry. We have apologies from Councillor Noor, Petit, Aretti, McVeigh, and Easton. And we have any declarations of interest? Okay. The meeting, the minutes, we need to approve the minutes from February 13th, 2025. Agree? All agree on minutes? Yes.
Allow me, from the minutes, hang on page, I've got a few comments I don't actually read through from the page 4 document. Somewhere it says, I've just got spelling of license with the S instead of C.
Okay.
Paragraph,
Boy,
last paragraph, section 4, where it's last paragraph. Yeah, but like it says in line 3, under the Highways Act, they could be licensed. I double checked with the Internet Dictionary, and it does say it should be an S. There are a few other places like that. Page 5, second paragraph. Then on section 4, third paragraph, talked about going about summertime. I must be the next story, must be the next document about summertime. Clocks going back to daylight savings time, but they're not. They're going back to GMT. Daylight savings time is summertime.
we want to handle that.
That is kind of material.
Whereabouts? Oh, is that-
Sorry, it was section 4, but I'm just wondering. It was talking about
Is it the second paragraph of page 5?
I think it's the
page 5. Sorry, apologies. Should have
Oh,
written this
yeah.
down.
I think it's the third paragraph in section 4.
Wherever it is, I do apologise. I should have written it down properly, but I didn't. It's a very what. But it does say there's a whole section on maybe it's in a later document. But anyway, wherever it says go back to daylight savings time, which should go back to whatever the UTC, Universal Time, or BMT, whatever you prefer calling it. So I'm looking at the whole agenda pack here. Package.
Dora, it might be the middle paragraph on page 5. The final Saturday in October when the clock went back to daylight saving time.
Thank you, that's the one. Yes, yes, I have clicked, yeah.
Thank you, Gloria.
Um,
Anything else?
yeah, I'm just looking, page 41, but maybe that's the next, not in the minutes anymore, page 41. I was looking at the whole agenda pack. Page 41, that's not, it's not minutes anymore.
No, we're doing.
Okay, that's it. On minutes, that's it.
Thank you, Gloria.
So we know the window tree again.
Page 9, sorry, forgive me, page 9. Did this rather in a hurry last night. Okay. Page 9, paragraph 2. In the middle of the paragraph, it says, about fines, the premises will need to repay up to 20,000. You need to pay, not repaying a fine, but paying a fine.
They pay.
Fine?
Yeah, I mean, take out the words, which could be up to having the word.
Yeah, we repay, whatever, but it's not repaying, not repaying, yes, whatever you can try it. Page 30. That may not be minutes. Apologies, Chair. No, page 30 is not minutes anymore. But
No.
Fine, thanks.
So, oh, sorry. Yes, Linda?
Just a general comment, Earl's Court has an apostrophe except when in relation to the exhibition centre, just to be precise.
Oh, wow. And what about on the tube? Apostrophe?
It's apostrophe everywhere.
Right, that's
except
correct,
in the
yeah.
exhibition centre.
Absolutely. Okay, so procedurally, how do you want to handle that? David had a suggestion. Can
My
we?
suggestion would be that we note something, they don't get officially put through. We do them all, then I approve the.
Okay, so a note can be added that as an addendum to the minutes, just the corrections.
That's
To make it as simple for you as possible.
What do you think of that? Procedurally, that's okay?
So I'll be the one that's going to note it. That's fine.
Thank you, everybody, for that. So can we agree on that basis? Can we agree with this?
Yeah.
Um, thank you so much, Fiona and Sharon, for all your work on this statement, and we'll let you carry on. Fiona, sorry, I'm still fortunate. Well done, you.
That's supporting Sharon, so
As always.
okay, no, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So the statement of licensing policy, we're here again. So the licensing act states that every licensing authority must have a statement of licensing policy. And the statement of licensing policy is advised to businesses, residents, and you yourself as members on how we will deal with applications, how we will process applications, and what information the licensing authority expects from applicants. So, as I said, we need to consult every 5 minutes, and we've now reached this stage. The last policy was published on the 11th of January 2021, so this current policy expires on the 10th of January. So, we've made a few revisions and suggestions. This will follow a certain format, so after today's hearing, it will go to leadership team, go to full council. If it so happens that something happened where it's unable to go to full council, then we'll have to revert to the previous policy by reinstating it. So a 12-week consultation did take place on the licensing policy, which ran from the 9th of June to the 31st of August. A copy of the proposed policy was sent to the Resident Association, licensed councillors, we had all councillors, statutory agencies. For the first time ever, we actually sent it to schools, and that was following a suggestion I think Councillor Wade may have made at the gambling policy review. They said actually thought schools should be included, so we did include schools on this. We also sent it to sound systems that operate at Carnival, and also all those that have got temporary technologies over the last 24 months.
How many is altogether?
It was a lot. I mean, for the Resident Association, there were over 400 email addresses, so it was a lot. There were also copies were placed in libraries, and so on. So a lot did get sent out. It was also on our consultation hub and also on the licensing webpage as well. We received over 70 responses, and I'll explain the over. So there were about 80 responses in total. Some people sent them in 3 times, so there's triplicate. Some people wrote in not quite understanding what the policy was about. Someone said, well, when do I pay my annual fee? Another person was complaining about a business. It's what happens at the business is not licensed. So checking it out and taking out all the certificates and so on for about 72 responses. I tried to summarise them as much as possible. And if you check the committee report on page 13, you'll see that they came under 4 more or less 4 different headings. So there is a general approach to the licensing policy. A lot of people raised concerns about areas that were mentioned in the policy. Some people queried the licensing process, and some people complained about discrete issues relevant to the licensing process. So if you turn to Appendix B, I'm sure you've read it anyways, I won't go into details. I have summarised the main concerns raised by residents and businesses. I've also included whether it's relevant to the statement of licensing policy, and I've also included a section whether the policy has been further revised following those comments and the reasoning behind that. So as mentioned, the policy next step after licensing committee is to go to leadership team, and the leadership team will have to make a decision on whether they should refer it to the council for a decision. So the ask of the members here today is for your comments and any notes you need to make. However, please do bear in mind that any substantial changes may mean we may need to go back to consultation. Because of the timing we've got at the moment, we may not be able to do that now, so we just have to approve it and possibly further revise the policy early next year. I think that's something we want to add in the summary. I'm happy to answer any questions you've got.
No one else has said that. Yeah, I do if you peruse on page. I'm looking at the full pack now, the public agenda pack. That's easy to get these page numbers. Page 30 on the first paragraph, it says several areas within the Licensing Authority acknowledges several areas within the borough are candidates for redevelopment. What does that mean?
So, see if I can get to that page. You're 30, my 30 different, so apologies.
Okay.
I think section 1.
Introduction 1.2.
1.2, yeah.
Yes, sorry, 1.2.
Policy, before we jump, opinions were asked of various league members, statutory agencies. And one of the comments that came back was that basically they were aware that there were several areas in Kensington and Chelsea which could do with redevelopment. In the course of those discussions, 3 areas were named. And Polly, if you could turn to section 1.2 on your copy, that's on the screen.
Next paragraph. Next page. Next page. That's it. Yeah, that's it.
So you'll see there that there were originally 3 areas named, South High Street, Kensington, Notting Hill Gate and Portobello Road. But following the comments that received post consultation, those areas have been removed.
Could you not say, because it reads to me, it was unclear. Could you say geographic areas? What do you mean by redevelopment? I mean, pulling down the houses. What do we mean by that?
Exactly what's what was.
Okay, so how about
We'd go
geographic
back
areas?
to the original author, today.
So we say geographic areas?
You could do, I'll take it
But
back.
it could be areas of something else, like.
But I would also say that we should include Earl's Court. Because you do have an amazing spaces apparently. And it is relevant to the development of late night dining.
I'll take a pass on that. We also quick advice from council on this. What some of the residents are concerned about was naming areas. So the advice of the council was,
If it could be considered, because
as
that's one of the reasons why we asked for an accumulative impact, because of the late night, using.
I think MT has a question.
Okay, on the first page, 29, the Hampton principles.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with what they are, where they came from, and why we are adopting them. So if you could kind of give us a bit of background on that.
explained in one of the appendices attached to the policy. Just give me a second, I'll just.
Maybe we're putting a reference in there too, so we can jump.
Page 76.
Page what, 76?
Yeah, put a reference in there to, yeah, to, because it's policy, right? Yeah, we see paragraph, whatever.
Glossary terminology again. We can put a reference to the back there. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, which of my head that 2005, I mean, that was an era where deregulation was very popular, and you know, certainly in buildings and stuff, we've come to realise it wasn't the best idea. So I just question why we're going back 20 years to something, and saying this is an exemplar.
It's still relevant now, there's been very further changes since then, so a lot of authorities, still do refer to council councils in those further legal. But it's dated, but it's still relevant.
So you're saying we need new legislation to,
And new guidance comes out, then we can replace that. At the moment, it's still relevant.
But yeah, I mean, I've got a few more. On page 35, this is a very minor thing, but as this is the public document, it will be, in 34, in the first row, the people for junior space between proximity and throughout.
Where is that going? Oh, yeah, I see it.
But paragraph 3.4,
Yeah,
then back to page 35.
Yeah.
makes sense, yeah.
It's just because I said this is going to be published.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Yeah. Page 41 and other places. For consistency and the way we tend to do licensing, so we said page 41, 9.8. Find it, page 41, yeah. The timings should be in 24-hour clock. We tend to do that in licensing meetings. Plus, further down the document, it does also use a 24-hour clock. And somewhere there's a 24-hour clock time, but there's a dot instead of a colon, so that's totally inconsistent. Yeah, that's essentially it. And finally, on page 57, we won't bring down television just yesterday. Page 57, we find it.
well, before you go, I think on page on the spelling of it, before you go ahead, the spelling of licenses is wrong. 9.8. Second
Licenses, you can see, then this.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah.
Okay, whatever. Page, what's like? Last paragraph.
We go through every single use of it.
Yeah, I think you just know that, so. Yeah, so that all spelled.
Consistently.
Yes. Just on the last, on page 33, end of item 23, above early 24, the phone number is given as 007. There's no area code 007, it's 020, space or hyphen.
Yeah,
Which page?
Page 57,
Starting section 3.
at the bottom of section 23. It's a widespread error, but there's no area code 0207. It's 020.
That's correct.
I won't bore you with the history of why people are late.
No doubt.
It's 020.
Okay, I think we leave that one in.
Pardon?
I think we should leave it.
No, it's wrong though.
It's not wrong.
0207 is not an area code.
No, it's not, but it indicates it's a landmark.
No,
That's,
020 is London landline. That's 020 is the code for London.
I understand what you're saying.
Well, but 028 is 028 is Northern Ireland, 023 somewhere in Southern England, 020 is London.
I think it's the same, so it's just pushing it back.
It was-
That's what it's going to do. You have to do that first.
Right, I mean, that's.
Yeah, but this indicates it's a landmark.
No, 020 indicates a landline.
Yeah, we could do that with that.
We can vote on it if you want.
It's an error. That's as simple as that. It's just,
That's fine. I just know that.
there's no argument about the code for London.
Do you want, I don't know.
Good.
Well, then there's a hotel issue that I've written into, basically. So This is clarifying on the hotel policy, clarifying essentially off sale and on sales for guest rooms and things like that. But we can take that offline.
I think it's fair. I have had a say that.
It's just acknowledged as being.
No, it's not right. Under
That's
the widespread statement that comes from the whole.
been noted, it's been noted, it's been noted, no side.
No, I'm just telling Linda.
Well, we don't need side conversations, we're trying to move on. And, Marie Therese, your point about the Hampton, principles. It was a good one to bring up, but we don't have to change things unless they, in the, principles themselves are not relevant.
Yeah, I just wanted to have, you know, background.
You could have cross-referenced it.
Okay? Yeah,
I think it's just questions, so actually.
Any
Those are
questions?
Questions or suggestions?
I want to make a couple. I would find it really useful to have track changes to compare this time with last time.
Oh, the
I know you had yellow highlights.
Yeah.
Yes, what was new, but actually what was deleted as well. I found helpful. And I just link that with you. I don't expect you to do anything more about it.
We can probably send that out separately. That's how it started and that's how we normally do it. But with the extent of changes, it got even confusing for me. So I came up with a way of highlighting all the changes that have been made. And then any changes after consultation, doing those track changes. So we have got a version on screen at the moment that has got incorporated any comments and changes made after consultation. But the document was getting so confusing, I was getting confusing. So I'll see if there's a way I could do it separately for members. But to send it out to the public, I knew it'd be confusing for them.
The second point, on page 11, executive summary. I would love to have seen, which maybe in one paragraph, or more than one line, just saying, it's aimed at this document is to balance the legitimate needs and its residents with those of people wanting to do business and the license transfer licenses in a borough that is overwhelmingly residential, but with some areas that are very, I don't like the word license, say, and a little bit more than that, so that somebody who is reading it can sense just by reading that paragraph what the thrust of it is. And I wouldn't want more than 2 paragraphs on it. So that it's not a significant change to what you're doing, but it tells people what the balance is. We're pro this, we're pro that, or actually we're trying to strike a medium balance between the two.
I'll just compare it's for the report, not necessarily the policy. That you're expecting.
Long-term policy.
Yeah, but okay, okay.
Particularly for, on my page 11, 1.1.
Yeah.
The book sets out, but if it went into the main document, I don't think that would necessarily be a bad thing. So that people can see what we at the council and particularly what this committee's got. Hence,
Yeah.
balance in my third point is a slightly different one. There is somewhere, and I can't see that, I'm mislaid it. There's a reference to group. If you're aware of it, and just think the proposal I remember seeing references to fees payable to zoos and so on. Not here, but the annual up rating.
Yeah,
And it'd be really helpful to know, got no places and we've got no zooms
yeah.
or whatever, just so that people can see that actually it's policy that has to be prepared for us. But who actually have any implementation clear.
I don't know if that's something to put in the policy.
Yeah, because we may get one.
No, I know you are. But for us reading it now, it says,
Put it in a report. Yeah,
there's no strip clubs in our BKC.
yeah, or something like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Otherwise, you'll find people just spending a lot of time, before it. And actually, it's completely not relevant
Exactly.
for us.
Good point.
It might be for Westminster, you can tell me otherwise,
Yeah,
but,
I don't think we have any, but there's stranger things you talked about.
No, I
We're not aware, we're not aware of any.
We have had inquiries in the
Yeah.
past.
Yes.
But they've never come to fruition, so we never.
We sent them all to Hammersmith.
Yeah, I mean, it has, it's got at least one, if not more.
Yes, very well known.
Yeah,
so those were my only 2 points, Jane, but well done you for
Thank you.
aware that it's a considerable, project that you've, a labour of love, you know. Certainly labour, whether it's labour of love, I wouldn't want you to impute you, but well done for your whole
Thank you.
Do you want it in the policy itself or
So which,
the comments about the strip clubs and the zoo? What you want it when it goes around to the committee?
and what is when it goes up, you get actually granted.
Yeah.
So that people can flag up, yes, we're dealing with in a sense for us at the moment, a hypothetical situation, because there aren't any. We've got to be aware that there might be something going on, and that they will then moment thinking over it rather than longer. And I hope reading the bits about Notting Hill Carnival and Thames, that is very topical in a way that with other matters I referred to. Actually, I'm not good for it.
And we can see that in future reports.
I have a question. It's about the casinos. To specifically, could you elaborate for us exactly the parameters for casinos?
so with casinos, they're primarily licensed under the Gambling Act 2005. We have 5 in the borough. We've had those 5 before the Gambling Act came into effect, and you can never have more than those.
Isn't that statutory that you can only have 5, or is that just practice?
No, so basically, when the Gambling Act came in, the government decided to allow a further 14 casinos throughout England.
How many?
14,
1-4.
1-4. So what they did was that basically local authorities had to bid to have one of those casinos in their area. Now, we already had 5 casinos under the previous Gaming Act, so we did not bid for one of those licenses. So the way the law stands at the moment, we can never have a new casino in this borough. We can never issue any more than 5 licenses we already had. But there is a special provision within the Gambling Act where, because you cannot get a new casino license unless it's one of the 14, they made a special provision for existing casinos, because if their list expired, get sold on the premises that they had, they gave them the opportunity to relocate that casino within the same borough. This is the situation that the company have with Notting Hill Gambling. So the casino, that company that held that casino went into administration, that licence was transferred. That premises is no longer available, and so they're now looking to relocate it. There are standard hours for casinos, which go up until, I think it's from 10 a.m. until 6 a.m. the following day. So those are the sort of default hours. But casinos can apply to vary that and remove that, the default hours, and basically operate 24 hours. And all of our casinos did that when the licenses were converted, when the Gambling Act came into effect. And as a result, they then applied to vary their premises license so that they could then sell alcohol throughout the whole time that the casino was open. The situation with Notting Hill is obviously they tried to vary the license so that it now applies to Notting Hill. If that is successful, they will then have to apply for a new alcohol license, because although the gambling license is transferable to another premises, the premises license of say of alcohol is not. So there is I believe a section in here to do with casino, and it basically it just says that effectively they were allowed to operate under the Gambling Act to provide gambling 24 hours a day, and the alcohol license normally runs along the same lines as if they know that.
Is that reflected in your policy? You feel? That wasn't clear.
There was a bit in there, but because this is strictly for alcohol, we can't go too much details about casinos in general. But we have amended the section to include something in relation to what Sharon mentioned earlier. If one casino decides to move that casino license to another, we have put a bit in there saying that we will think of relevant conditions when the premises license comes in. So even when the gambling license is transferred, they will have to apply for the new premises license.
Sharon, is it not true for gambling's from 10 to 6? If they want to open 24 hours, then they have to apply.
Yes, but all of our casinos did apply for that variation.
Right.
So
one in Nottingham Gate that's transferred.
So that casino license as it stands is a 24-hour license. It doesn't yet apply to Notting Hill. They've applied to move it from the previous premises to Notting Hill, and that is going to become the full premises. But there are multiple objections to that.
51.
Yeah.
According to the papers.
The things with gambling and casinos in particular is we don't have a lot of experience dealing with these applications. They are very few and far between. And so unlike the Licensing Act, where I'd like to think we were pretty, I won't say expert, we're pretty knowledgeable about the Licensing Act. With gambling, because they're so few and far between, we kind of have to, when we get an application in, we often have to go back to the legislation and seek advice from the legal department, because it's not an area where we've gained a lot of knowledge or expertise, because simply put, we just don't see the volume of applications. We might go 2 or 3 years. We've only had one other casino that relocated. It was the one that was underneath the Royal Garden Hotel. And the company that had that casino license also had the casino license at the hotel in Gloucester Road, Harrington Garden. I don't know what it's called now. It used to be the Gloucester Hotel. So what they did was in order to preserve that license, they essentially moved it and assigned it to the same premises but a different part of the premises. And then over time, what they did was for many years that license was just sitting there, it wasn't being utilised. So what they did was redesign the existing casino to effectively make it 2 casinos. So you've got one which is your traditional casino with the gaming tables, and then the second license, which was used in the Royal Garden, was basically became an electronic casino. So when you go into the premises, you've effectively got 2 casinos. And they did that obviously so that they could utilise that licence, which actually has been effectively dormant for a number of years.
It's called Grosvenor Casinos now.
Thank you.
Linda?
Yes, I think the touch on the adult gaming, because you referred to digital gambling in that particular one. I'd like to know how they're responding to adult gaming, and also I'd like to have some understanding as to whether or not there have been visits and to gambling venues over the last 3 years, and whether there were any problems highlighted.
I'm just looking at the figures now, so I can give you some rough figures, but I've got queries myself. So basically, every year we have to provide figures to the Gambling Commission on how many inspections we've done on AGCs, which are adult learning centres, betting shops and casinos. So just looking at the figures now, I believe we have three adult gaming centres, and all of them have been visited in the last 2 or 3 years. There's been no concerns raised.
It's not supposed to be annual.
Not necessarily, because of how many premises we have to visit. I mean, we've got about 1,100 licensed premises.
Yes, but I think
Yeah.
it's under adult gaming centres. I think it's highlighted in BBC News earlier this week that in fact councils are supposed to go and visit them at least once a year.
I don't think it's once a year. I know they have to visit them regularly. I will check and see, but I know that we've had visits conducted last year, and some more were due later on this year for the free, plus the ventilation. But no concerns have been raised to me, but I'll ask the officers. If concerns are raised, then we visit them more than once a year anyway. But at the moment, I'm not getting any reports of any concerns raised when they're visited.
But taking on point, you have quite set guidelines for casinos, and there does seem to be adult gaming centres appear to be on a slightly different level. Can you possibly expand on what your view is and what the legislation is on it?
Wouldn't that be in the gambling policy?
It would. I think it's subtly different, isn't it?
I mean, in this borough, we have effectively 3 types of gambling premises. We have the casinos, betting shops, and AGCs. As Fiona said, we've got 3 AGCs in the borough. The interesting thing about AGCs is that the casino licences and also the betting shop licences have what we call default hours.
Yes.
So there is a presumption that they'll operate within those hours, although they can apply to extend those hours. With the agencies, there are no default hours. So the presumption is that if a licence is granted, it's granted for 24 hours. That is the presumption, for want of a better word, in the Gambling Act. As Fiona has said, that I appreciate that in some boroughs there are concerns with the AGCs, but the ones that we've been having in this borough have been, up until now, to my knowledge, well managed. They're not the sort of complaint. And our inspection programme is based on risk. And it changes over time. So if we start to get complaints about particular premises, then obviously the risk goes up and then they get visited more frequently. But normally we would expect the agencies would normally be inspected between every 12 and 18 months. Betting shops between 18 months and 2 years. Casinos, 3 years, because the management of casinos today in this borough has been extremely high. And we obviously have to factor that in with all the other premises, which are predominantly licensing act premises, of which we have over 1,100 premises, which are the ones that tend to be sort of complaints. So they are visited regularly, the agencies. If complaints are received, then obviously the risk rating will go up and they will be visited more frequently. But up until now, I don't think it's been necessary for us to target them for more frequent visits, when in fact we haven't had any complaints and we haven't had any concerns that we've identified during our visits, which would give us cause to think, well, we need to visit them more frequently.
That's very sensible.
And then just, you said betting shop, so you go around over the course of a couple of years to Paddy Power and all different, and all the other ones, like Global Paddy Power is one. And you go to all of that.
Yeah.
And how long was that before?
How long would the visit last?
Yeah.
So normally with betting shop, it would probably take about an hour, hour and a half, maybe at the most. But the officers are obviously looking to make sure, number one, the conditions that we provide, the conditions are mandatory conditions that are set out for betting shops. But yeah, I would think probably about an hour. They would sit and go through any documentation that they've got on site and that sort of thing.
How many are there in the borough? If they're closing because of online gambling.
Okay, this is the last annual report that it's only to February.
Okay.
I'm just trying to remember. I know last year it was 39, but I think it could be
Betting shop.
26.
Betting shops, it's in the 20s. We've actually lost betting shop in this borough. Since
I know
the
about
council.
her because of online gambling.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, did you want to move on to Dory? You wanted to discuss the hotel policy or you?
Yeah, no, I'm just put it on the table because so I'm happy to put it briefly
Okay.
to the minutes. I have to say, having experienced 2 hotel cases in 2020 or whatever else, I put forward an idea of having explicit hotel policy in short. So we've got one now, it's a draft, which is good. I find most of it fine, perfectly fine. There's just one angle which I found difficult or unclear, and that is essentially defining like on sales and off sales. Sales to guests. If I thought it was quite a good idea to classify the bars as pubs, treat them the same way as pubs, it says in there. And that makes it easy from that point of view, because then you can, whatever you give a pub, then you do for the hotel. But the difficulty come when that closes and there's still people drinking. Where are they drinking? In the bar, in the hotel room, and so on. So I put forward some points, which I've now rather belatedly also sent to Fiona. And I think it's a non-material change to define on sales and off sales, because that was a real issue with the Ruby Zoe Hotel before it was the Ruby Zoe. That license that was given out was so unclear. That was the fault of the licensing staff. It's more the committee, I suppose. But it doesn't matter who's. It's not a matter of pointing your finger. It's just a matter of saying we could make things clear as to on sales and off sales, sales in the rooms, and guests in the rooms, and there's booze can be supplied and refrigerated. Often there's alcohol already supplied in the room, so you walk into the room and you can take a drink and pay for it. That needs to be defined. Those aspects need to be defined.
I think our lawyer has something to say.
Well, I think I was just going to say, it depends how they present their application, of where the red line is, because the red line normally denotes the extent of on sale. Sometimes that doesn't always include the bedroom, so I think it's down to the applicant.
I think we should define it though.
It is entirely a matter for the applicant whether they include the hotel rooms. And we have a number of hotels which have provided us with plans of all their hotel rooms, and that is their licensed premises. With that particular hotel, there were no minibars in the rooms, and the solicitor, presumably having discussed it with its client, decided to limit the licensed area for on sale to the public areas, including the lobby, I think, where customers guests could sit after the bar is closed, and the drinks served to the room would be by way of an off sale. That was quite unusual, to be honest. Most hotels, we haven't had many hotel applications. Most of them were converted licenses, and they include on and off sale. Some of those hotels have provided plans of the whole hotel, and others have not. If they're having minibars in the rooms, then they need to include them in the plans, basically.
I see it as, I don't have any problem with any of that. I think we should just be clear around our definitions, and that paragraph 212, I think it is, it just needs, I've written quite a lot, but actually it can probably be summarised in your, because you have experience. maybe a sentence or two, making it clear what's what, because I really think at this stage, looking from outside the bubble, it's not clear. And the guests staying after the hour, they can take it offline.
Yeah, no, I understand what he's saying. I think the nature of hotels, since each one is different and they're applying for different things, makes it difficult with regards to the policy. Perhaps, would you be happy with a sentence that includes mini bars?
Maybe.
Mini bars have to be licensed, correct?
Well,
That's an offset.
You've got to watch what I'm saying. Sorry.
yeah. I mean, the thing is, when they open the bar, if we look at when it's appropriated project, it's in the bar. As soon as they open the fridge and take the drink out, effectively they're purchasing that alcohol. So we can require to be, if you've got mini bars, you should be, showing on your rooms. It should be part of your conduct.
See, for example, you could define minibars as on sale. Just make it simple.
So would you be happy, Dory, they can add a sentence about mini bars?
Yes, but there's,
No buts, let's just come to.
I agree with that. But the point is, there's also the question of the guests staying. I don't mean hotel residents, guests. I mean their guests. They come in and they're sitting there. Because at the moment, the way the policy stated is, it says that people can stay on. Right? You're a resident. You've come to visit London. You've invited me. The bar closed officially at midnight.
The thought of that.
I just thought I'd drag you into this, okay? And then after the bar officially closed to the public, I'm still there, and you're still buying a drink for me. And see,
The question is the treatment of their guests.
the guest issue, I don't mind, guests, hotel residents, drinking in the hotel all night long, it's gonna be on sale, not a problem. I don't have a problem with that. It's the guests also. What happens with the guests? They could get a drink, you bought the drink for me, and then 10 minutes after closing time, I walk out with the drink.
So
Okay,
what's your
stop me
point?
doing that. But
What's your point?
my point is, it's got to be defined. For example, you can't have people do, what can the guests, the residents, what can they do after closing time of the public areas? It's not defined.
It is usually reference to buying guests, isn't there?
It's about, it normally, bound again.
Yeah, bona fide guest, right, that's the word, thank you, bona fide guest. What do you, they're not defined as,
So you're asking, I'm trying to figure out what you're asking. Are you asking if I have a room in a hotel and I invite Pretty, she comes over for a drink?
no, not VA.
No. And, a Pretty takes her drink, we order a cocktail within hours, and then she decides to leave with the drink. That's what you're asking? We're just trying to sum up what you're asking.
One of the things, but the other thing,
It's an open drink, it's not, I mean.
Yeah, I get that.
Isn't it?
Yeah, but
It's not a bottle.
what happens if you buy a bottle of Zillow, I'm gonna walk out with the bottle? Closed, a sealed bottle.
Does it, on sales and things,
Well, the sealed
if this bona fide, I guess it boils down to individual
It's
circumstances.
hard, in the case of the Ruby Hotel, the hostels were limited to people basically having drinks in their rooms.
I think it's really bad, it should be on sale, not my view.
I think though Sharon makes a point, and so does Lindsay, each case is different. And the enforcement is different. If the person is walking around with a drink that he took and he's making a nuisance, that's one set of circumstances. He just takes a bottle of beer and goes home. So we have to deal with it as an individual situation.
You just have to define broadly certain things, I agree with you, of course, but in certain things, like already suggested, very good suggestion you made, and you just have to define it a bit closer, that's all.
I think
And
that's
ultimately,
the
you're right.
certain conditions depending on the circumstances, like no sales, individual.
Yeah, I mean, this area as well is that we expect licensees to outline where their on sales will take place or words to that effect. But to say this will be classed as on sales, this will be classed as off sale, I'd have to take legal advice, further legal advice on that. Because when I originally wrote this paragraph and provided it to council, the comment was, oh, that's an unusual section. Okay, don't see many authorities with it. But we could possibly put a line just saying, applicants will need to define where their on sales will be, off sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What we can't do is basically say, we can't tell them you know, how to craft the application, because it's, as we found with the Blue Hotel, that was an experienced licensing solicitor. And he basically made that determination that we didn't want to complete the hotel, that there were no really bars and everything could be by way of an off sale. And in fact, the licence was conditioned in that sense, so that the off sales were restricted.
How they control it, so there's a delivery to the room. Why is it that the lead member, the cabinet member for Westminster at the time, was really interested in seeing a proper definition?
Okay,
And that's Westminster, and they've got cheapest bars and
But
hotels.
we have I said to Tang Chi, that we have a request that all such hotels have a loyalty fund. So that in this scenario that Dorian's presented, the lawyer can give advice as to where the drink should not be allowed to take.
anyway, I think we move on now.
Yeah.
Any other issues?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please.
I'd like to say that I welcome the extra paragraphs that you have put in, particularly on welfare and vulnerability, and also on modern slavery, because we were silent, things change, and I think that's really good. And we now have, paragraphs stating what we think the issues. So thank you.
Who said that? And also, could you elaborate this once again, we do it at every meeting, the difference between the pavement license and the summertime? That seems to be getting bitchy.
That. Oh, it's not voice of it. I lost my voice over this week, so.
My understanding is pavement licence is usually adjacent next to the actual building, on the usual private highway or private land. And the summertime licence, both interchangeably referred to as parklet terraces. They're usually in the parking bays that have been suspended.
That's right.
And it's
Yeah, you do need to have a pavement licence in order to have a summertime terrace. It's part of the process.
And they're dealt with under separate legislation, the Business and Planning Act, and generally speaking, our standard conditions, they end at 10 p.m. So obviously, you shouldn't be duplicating business and planning requirements within the licensing, but sometimes it's nice to try and dovetail times we have, or for example, if the premises stays open later than 10, then you get an condition on requiring the tables and chairs to be rented unusable by 10, just so that everything aligns nicely and makes it smoothly easier.
And there's a strict 2-week consultation. We have no say on that. So as soon as the application comes in, we have to allow 14 days for anyone to write in with any comments. After those 14 days, there is a further 2 weeks for the licensing authority to come to a decision that is granted.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, I thought that changed, so it was only a COVID thing, those 2 weeks, it's still there.
It was a week before. It was literally,
Oh, it's, yeah, struggle thing.
But they've given us 2 weeks consultation and 2 weeks determination, so it's 4 weeks now.
Right, no, it has gone up a bit.
The application that we made as our sport residents, were for a cumulative impact in. I find you say before considering, the authority would need to gather and assess such evidence from responsible authorities and other bodies. Well, what about the residents that are actually saying that they want one? I think the Earls Court Society put in a submission asking for it. I put in a submission. I think Mary's has raised this in the past.
No, it was a recommendation in the Earls Court call to action.
Yes.
That was the recommendation.
And I think one of my problems, and this come about through people talking about McDonald's, Admiral and Silvertime. And one of the things that's very, very clear is that residents are changing their behaviour. They don't want to go onto Old Sport Road late at night because it is a problem. They feel uncomfortable. And therefore, at what stage does that evidence, because that's material, we've got the police saying they get noise and nuisance from 4 to 5 when there's nobody actually operating in that area to be able to monitor the problems. We know about the early morning congregation of street lovers and other individuals that make people change their route to go to the station. I think that the impact of the late night economy, whether it's late night food or gambling or whatever, has actually changed people's perception and habit and how they actually use the street. I've had people say, women in particular, they don't want to come out of the tube after 9 o'clock at night. They wake up, go back to the. I've got a man who's ex-military, doesn't want to come out of the tube station after 2200 hours. So it has changed people's perception. And actually, given the resourcing of the police and the fact that when there are emergencies, it tends to be different police teams turning up from perhaps Hammersmith or other places. There's this lack of joined up evidence as to the impact of how people use the street and who uses the street.
Do you want them to go into policy? Linda?
So what I'm saying, you're saying insufficient evidence, and I would actually say there is a mountain of evidence if you actually ask the right people.
So to put that differently, how much evidence would you need?
So as far as I'm aware, I did seek advice on this. So many of the responses that we received, I sent to Council, who's a seasoned legal barrister, licensing barrister. And one of the things she said was basically that has to be separate from the licensing policy. So we've got a licensing policy there. So if the ask is that you would like a community impact policy, then we'll have to get the relevant evidence from the police, the Lloyd's team and the other statutory agencies to basically say.
Who will be every statutory agency?
So it could be like a crime safety team. They will be consulted on that as well. But the main people are the police and Lloyd's. I did have a conversation with the police officers regarding this, both licensing officers and also Ian Davis. And they both said that they just haven't got the evidence at the moment to basically corroborate and say that their sport is in need of a fix. As you'll see, they didn't respond to the licensing policy. Before the close date, I wrote to them again and said, what are your comments? And they literally said no comments. That's it. So until we have the evidence from the police and Lloyd's team to substantiate it, I mean, I can look into it again.
Because it really, I mean, it has been extraordinary. I don't know how many objections there have been to Silvertime and Admiral and McDonald's, but it indicates that actually after a certain hour, the street no longer belongs to residents. It belongs to individuals that are hard to control. And I don't know whether you've read the Working Party on hospitals, where it identifies that there's a problem. They have a high level of vulnerability. They have about 50% of the so-called specially supported housing units in the borough. And the street gets taken over after a certain time. And if people change their habits, they don't want to go there. Actually, you have a problem because they won't be reporting.
I think the thing is that in particularly people get fed up of falling down the conveyance and making an enormous nuisance to say to the noise nuisance team, please come, there's a problem. I have this particularly in Hollywood Road, where residents are, constantly upset by the noise and etc. But they don't want to have to report things anymore. And you have to kind of persuade people that unless they report an incident or whatever, make a complaint, it's not registered.
And also, if you've changed your habit, you're not going to tell anyone.
That's right. I mean, the fact is that, to have
I spoke to this young woman, I said, don't, you know, do you go to that? She said, I don't want to come out of the tube station after 9 o'clock at night. And I said, well, what do you do? And she said, well, what I normally do is try and share Ubers. But as soon as my money runs out, I don't go out. And this is actually changing the way people live. And I think that we do need to look at it. People, I mean, I came out quite late, from the tube and around McDonald's. There was an incident, and I spoke to the security guy, and he said, "Oh, I'm only responsible for the people inside. I'm not responsible for the people immediately outside, actually, on the area that will take." What time was that? That was about 11:30 at night. And it was, you could have passed, a woman was, couple of guys came over, they were drunk, the woman was perhaps inappropriately dressed, but they clutched her breast. And I said to the security guard, what are you going to do? Oh, well, there are too many people outside. So these guys, all right, you have conditions which we apply.
And I just, sorry, on that note, actually, that's a crime, right? So
Yeah, I mean, the point is,
so then it's a hotspot, but you can't, yeah, but you can't, like, it's difficult. I guess as the officers or whatever, not we, need to go, obviously, if they're a noise and nuisance, and if there's a report, fine. But things like that is a whole different thing. That needs to be reported with likely. But the point is, if shops and certain things are open late night, it should be a bit of a safety net. So when I walk all hours of the night, I go to where there are places I know are open. So I will walk a route where I know there's a shop. So the point is, if it is a crime, it needs to be reported. If nothing is being reported yet to the police, if nothing is being reported, how do you monitor it? How can you monitor, oh, I'm going to walk this way?
I mean, Laura, I take the point that we say, oh, well, it's going to be fine because you have an SIA guard or security on the thing. The fact is that these guys are not responding because they say they make a decision as to whether they're going to be putting themselves at risk. And rather than, those people were attached to McDonald's, all right?
I think we're gonna move on.
Yeah, but I think that I'm trying to.
No, we're going to stop this here because you have a case coming up and it should not be discussed here. And on
No, I'm talking about in general as to why.
you're talking about specific.
I'm saying why residents aren't actually using Earls Court Road late at night. They don't want to go there. They feel dangerous and they feel intimidated. And they feel, you say about places being open, that's not how people feel.
Okay, I think it's too subjective what you're discussing now.
It was like a route map as to how we can achieve it.
All I was going to say is I would love it to be suggested to that woman who was assaulted that she should have gone into McDonald's so that she was protected for the period.
She couldn't have got in.
Why not?
It was because they were blocked by other people waiting to get into McDonald's.
Okay, that is it. Yes,
No, I think I do see in this, but if I understand you correctly, I think the point that you're trying to make is with businesses and the community, what we need to try and do is create a sort of safe, surroundings collectively. So it's, we can support businesses and at the same time, people, young ladies, whoever are passing by, that it's a safer environment. And I think that's what you're trying to say. And then for a business owner to say, well, you know what, they're off the premises, it's not my business. Well, let's work together.
she didn't say that a business owner did that. No, did not say that. That's why I don't want to get subjective here. She said barred outside. Let's not start doing her case.
No, sure.
Scheduled, you make a point. You can come and present if you want. But let's talk about how the policy can work in this regard, taking into account people's consideration.
And I just wanted to say, so what we usually do when the people writing the comments, we usually respond directly to them. I am in the process of responding to those. I will get to those shortly, councillor Wade. And then we'll explain more in detail whether whether it's going to be a yes or whether it's going to be a no.
Yes. My, a couple of observations. I couldn't see anywhere, and please forgive me if I'm noticed, I was looking for it again. There's no mention of, aids or, you know, people, especially restaurants, like we've got a couple of cases in my ward where they just slowly, you know, expand further out on the pavements, and even if it's not there, designated territory. And then you think, well, it's a small visit, you know, but that's not right. And A boards, I mean, oh my God, A boards in my ward is just a nightmare. And a number of times I say to people that you shouldn't be, you know, we have A boards literally at crossing. And I don't think we stress enough.
It's not in here, and it won't be included here. So basically, A boards, they will fall in line with pavement licences. So as far as I'm aware, there is a separate policy being written on pavement licences, what's allowed and what's not allowed. We did get quite a few comments from people saying we don't want heaters on the terraces, we don't want A-boards on the pavement. So a separate policy will be written on A-boards and pavement licences.
So in that pavement license, they will also include the removal of some of the terrace furniture when the time is the cutoff time of 10 p.m. and not when the premise is closed. Because I think that's the other thing the residents have complained, saying, okay, fine, all the punters have gone in at 10 o'clock, but then we're woken up again because the management is clearing off is that part of?
It's already in the summertime policy, as far as I know. So there is a separate summertime al fresco policy, and it is in there. And as far as I'm aware, it's the same 10 o'clock cuts off for pavement licenses. So it will be in that. So.
But what I mean is the removal of the furniture as well, that they have to do it at 10 o'clock.
Always be removed. So what people say is removed or rendered unusable, but sometimes they haven't got places to put them. But I know it is.
But you see what I mean?
But it is what
the residents are saying is fine, you know, we think, okay, fine, we can go to bed. And then come 11:30 or whatever the, closing hour is, then they're moving on the furniture. So yet again, we'll wait for another 15, 20 minutes. And I don't think that's right. I'm just food for thought. I mean, I don't know where it belongs to. Because I have a ward where we have lots of pubs. And as much as we love them, but I think we can't, it's just yet another thing. It's a food for thought. And another point I had to make, sorry, Chair, I'll be very brief. I have. Sorry, I had some 1 second. Sometimes yes, it is. Okay, it's more of an overall, a broad observation. Is again, we all very much support nighttime businesses. But when we live, where businesses and residents are together, I think sometimes we're too leaning towards the businesses, because if we, I won't name names, but if one business A is allowed to open till 1, but the other business is not allowed to, be open till 11, for instance, I think that inconsistency along a street, so let's say Nottingham Green, for instance, we have residents living upstairs in blocks of flats. I think, is it possible to say, right, you know what, we will stick to this, because otherwise there's so many inconsistencies, and then the extension of the business hours just continues, and the residents never get any respite. And one can say, don't buy a place, but some residents have lived there for 30, 40 years. And I think we don't always, we're not considerate enough on thinking sometimes about the residents as well. We want the businesses to succeed, but I think we need to educate the businesses or have a review. I mean, am I right in thinking that once we give them a license, it's indefinite?
Unless reviewed, revoked or surrendered.
Right. So can we say that if it's expensive, it's too lengthy as a procedural thing and unnecessary, possibly. But I mean, can we say that it will be reviewed every 5 years or, you know, the next?
Can't do it blanket for all premises, but if you get a specific application before you, then you can decide whether you want to grant it for a year or 2 years, but you have to have specific reasons for doing so. Each decision you make is open to appeal. So it has to relate to one or more of the licensing objectives. So you can't say, well, there's no need for it, so we're only going to give you a license to 11. But as a committee, when granting licenses, you can say, well, we're only going to grant a license to 11 because we believe granting a later hour will impact on one or more of the licensing objectives. So you can't say a specific area can only have licenses to 12 and so on. It has to be on each individual premises. We don't like licenses in licensing. If there's no objections, we have to issue the license. So any that do need granting will always come to you. So it's a thing as a committee you may want to consider on an individual basis.
We have to.
Yeah.
And it's only fair because everyone has their own set of circumstances. If we say broadly that, okay, this street will close everything, you have to have grounds. It's still a legal process. We have to have grounds for everything. We can't just say, because one person feels this way and another one that way. That's why we have consultations. People can object, they can complain, but it has to be on an ad hoc basis, case by case. David?
Fiona, can I ask a question about any particular premises? You have somewhere a busy street with a number of different licenses open, and let's say they're all open until 11, and you have one that comes into new hands or whatever, and it wants to open till 12. Can we, at a committee meeting, say you can have it till 12, but because everybody else is to 11, we will review it in a year's time, part of our decision? Or do we have to have a specific reason to be able to do that? Which is above and beyond.
That's what lawyers say.
Which is above and beyond the
The
fact that it's the
lawyers
new,
say
that it's the first one you block that's going to.
Temporary licenses, they kind of came about during COVID and they're not something that's a known entity in the licensing act, but it's something that came about during COVID. And I think the other thing to say, it depends on the type of operator, and also if they apply for permanent license, we cannot impose a temporary license on them. That you have to take that into account. So if you suggested at committee, you know, there are concerns, would you consider a time limited temporary license, year, 2 years? If they say no, we want you to consider all or nothing of the conditions. You cannot impose a temporary license.
Because they haven't applied for it.
Yeah, so it's not legal to impose it.
Thank you for the clarity.
Yeah, we've had a couple of premises that have had variations on a temporary basis, but as Lindsay has said, that is because they agreed that during the discussion, and so the committee then could limit that variation. The other thing is with these sort of inconsistencies with different premises having different licenses. We're still in a situation, even 20 years on, where the majority of our licenses were converted back in 2005 from the old justices licenses. They've continued on and on and on. And quite a few of those were actually varied initially in that transition process. The new grants that have come after have possibly apply for later, but as Fiona says, if there are no objections, you've got no discretion, they get the license that they applied for. Because that's what we're required to do. It's only if it's objected to, it comes before committee, and then you have to decide on the evidence and have grounds.
Thank you. So Sharon, did we do one or two actual full temporary licenses during February around that time? Not just variations. I know what you mean about temporary variations, but I was thinking.
Yeah. I mean, we've done some time limited licenses, specifically Carnival springs to mind. We've had a few of the sound systems that have come before committee, and they've proposed and they've agreed to a time limit to get their license and sort of see how it runs. you can't then extend that, they then have to come back again for committee, and we have had, even other than, final, we have had one or two, that have agreed that,
But they agreed it, yeah,
they agreed it.
all or nothing.
Yeah,
They,
it wasn't something necessarily that they proposed at the outset, but, they just kind of agreed to modify their application along the way.
Also, at a hearing, if the applicant's lawyer sees that the hearing is going south for them, they may suggest, and they can do that at the hearing.
again, that's agreed, the applicant has agreed.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's the whole point.
yeah.
Anything else? David, did you have another point? No. Okay. Lindsay, did you want to say something?
I have nothing else to add.
Thank you very much. You worked, yes,
Jan, just one minor point, you know, this one we're discussing with, you know, the point. It was in your, something about cooking food. They're not allowed, and I think you said something about they can use microwave or something, or not use microwave or something. Yeah, but I don't know where, because I know microwaves are almost historic.
Yeah.
The new thing is air fryers.
Yeah.
And in air fryers, you can, I mean, there's like ovens and everything. So is that qualified as?
Qualified, that was just an example.
So should we add that or do you think that's, I remember reading it, I was just.
It's the late night refreshment section.
It's somewhere,
Yeah,
I can't find it, I'm so sorry.
I know I did receive a comment asking to add air fryers, but that list is not exhaustive, it's just an example. But I'm pretty happy, I think add air fryers and leave it as is.
show that we're up, I think it's good for us, right? To show that we're up to date.
And air fryers, you can do more than microwaves now,
Yeah.
right? So
We've got one, we never use the other sections, but we haven't. But let's say EG microwave.
yeah, as I say, it's a very minor thing.
Air fryers stand for.
Same thing.
And is everybody happy about the delivery people? I mean, is that, you know, I mean, are we robust enough in our policy to say?
We can be, because we have to remember that not all the delivery and so on, they're delivering things that we consider licensable activities. So people like McDonald's and so on, we use delivery all day long. But we only license McDonald's from 11 o'clock at night. So I think in the policy there is reference about asking about making riders turn their engines off when they're waiting. Also to let use the toilet and stuff.
Yeah.
Talking, but there's so many different riders, some work themselves, some deliver and everything, so it is a work in progress. But I think in the policy, we've gone as far as we can go.
But you're on the case.
Okay.
You're on the case.
And make it more of the business's responsibility to make sure that, you know, that they behave. Well, not behave, but you know, it's all done.
And sometimes they gather there and they're not even for any premises there.
That's right, yes.
They come in, it's a place to sit and chill and
We have
get
got-
food. And
We have it along your way all the time, and that's why.
Yeah, we have it too.
Yeah, so, you know, and I just think we need to do it.
As long as everyone's aware of it, that's the important thing, and that the owners have to be aware. Did anyone want to bring up anything else? I wanted to tell everyone, well done about Notting Hill Carnival. It was really one of the safest carnivals ever. And I think it had a lot to do with the licensing committee rejecting applications.
We did that, that's everything.
Not everything. Not everything.
I think we get good action in this.
It was much safer because we really thought about each application and the ramifications and even fairness when there was, we granted, but it was a much safer carnival than ever before.
And excellent guidance from you guys every year, of course.
On that note, for future reference, maybe not just the carnival, but it's just an aside, when we do have a case
it would be really helpful. I think only in one case I got this time, there was like a hotspot map of where crime actually is in relation to the premises that you're doing, but that would be amazing. Would be police. And then also, if the same people have applied for multiple years, so maybe a history of them applying and, you know, so we know if it's, you know, yes, but because, yeah, because we had a CNOD operator that we kind of went up against the grain and we took a chance because we were like, well, no, they proved themselves to be, but it'd be good just to have that in the pack ready so we know what we're working with.
Yeah, no, we did a good job on that.
And on that point,
Yeah.
Chair, but maybe this not, one of the points we had discussed is for all the businesses trying to apply for tents, that they should engage with the company. You know,
That's
in
very
advance.
important.
So, do we do it here or do we?
Always tell them to, it doesn't always transpire,
But we can't put it
I think that's
anywhere
right,
within the carnival section.
because going around all the day, with that,
carnival section.
Where is that? I didn't see that. Oh, I trust you.
I went round with Janet on the day with Tim Davis, and we went in and told people they could not serve through hatch alcohol if they felt like it. And, you know, they were kind of going, oh, but I didn't realise. Well, I mean, they should have known what was in their actual licensing, so they should have realised. But I think maybe some prior engagement in certain streets where, you know, that happens, to go before and talk to them, so you're not having to do it on the actual day.
Yeah, we are planning to do that. It was so late notice, as you realised last year. Very late to the day when this all came about. So we are hoping to get some information on our website and to engage with lots of businesses and so on. Beforehand and right to the test.
People get to review the definition of street trading, aren't we?
Yesterday, probably.
So that
Yes.
it's clear
Yeah.
what is and what isn't street trading and things.
Exactly,
Which is
because people didn't know whether or not that they needed a street trading license. And how about the deadlines for carnival?
Deadlines we provide, I think in, the policy. Yeah, they go with their own rules. In the policy, we do say that we prefer at least 12 weeks in advance, and that way we get to engage with all the appointees and so on. No matter how we try, always comes in late. One of the things that I am, I'm not showing yet, but I am proposing, if we have enough resources and expertise to do it. Just before COVID, we had a workshop for the sound systems where they could come in and we sat down with them and helped with their forms. Some of them just look at the forms a bit difficult for them. So if we do have the resources, maybe February next year, we have a series of workshops and say, come in and we'll get forms.
Yes, some of the questions weren't very clear or weren't very obvious. And they have to engage with the police.
So they have to go with police, environmental health, we also encourage them to engage with local community because they are the event organisers and they should have some sort of idea of what's being proposed in their events.
Well, I think they realized as a result of this year that we get very serious. And that they, you know, it's not just coming and you could sell hot dogs, you know, it's really serious. So that's good.
And one thing to let you know as well, I have spoken to police, literally we start planning for the next carnival, the day carnival finishes. So I have seen some video footage from Ladbroke Road, some of the hotspots that you mentioned, Laura. So I've told them that this is what the committee will need to see. And when showing the committee at the committee hearings, they need to point out what they want the committee to see. Don't just turn the video on and leave you guys, because sometimes you will miss it, but to point out what has happened. So that should be coming your way next year.
Great. And you're having an open house for applicants, is that right?
Hopefully, if we can get resources, it's all about cost and the expertise with lots of new members of staff now who have that knowledge of pens and so on. So it's to get our current officers up to scratch and see if we can have
That would be really helpful to applicants, I think.
And I think also, so it must be like election next year, we're gonna, redo councillor training and revise and bring it down for all our training materials so that everybody's up to speed. Readiness for next year.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Chairman, I'm so sorry. Just again, there were a couple of places where I had to look up the acronym. So just, just a minor point. So if you could just check and make sure that all the acronyms are, I think we have glossary for it at the beginning or whatever, or we even you spell it out, that's all. I just have to look it up and I don't know that, so.
Thank you to governance, you're doing a great job. Thank you to licensing, thank you to our legal. Thank you to our vice chairs, and thank you to the commission.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I did not, Chairman. We finished exactly at 11:30.
Buy me a cup of coffee. Decent.
Just gotta wait for it to tick over. Okay, I'm on to the.